Sarah was tired and dirty. She had traveled for days and had nowhere to go. Her feet hurt, and the sun was low in the sky. In front of her stretched a large ranch. The quiet land looked empty and lonely, but it was better than wandering alone. A tall cowboy named Jack saw her standing at the gate. He wore a wide hat that shadowed his face. "Are you lost?" he asked. Sarah nodded, too shy to speak. She didn't know anyone here, and she felt small and scared. Jack looked around and then back at her. "There's no room in the house tonight," he said. "The barn is empty. You can stay there if you need to." Sarah's heart sank. Sleeping in a barn didn't sound safe, but she didn't have another choice. "Thank you," she whispered. He led her to the barn. The smell of hay and animals was strong. The floor was hard and uneven, and there was no bed. Jack laid a blanket on the hay and said, "It's not much, but it will keep you warm." Sarah hugged herself and tried not to shiver. That night, she lay on the hay and listened to the wind outside. The animals made soft noises, and the barn felt cold. Sarah thought about her life and wondered if she had made a mistake coming here. She felt alone, but she tried to be brave. In the morning, Jack brought her a simple breakfast of bread, eggs, and milk. Sarah ate slowly, grateful for the warmth and food. She smiled at him. Jack nodded, but didn't say much. His quiet way made her feel nervous and curious at the same time. "You can help me around the ranch," Jack said. "It will give you a place to stay and something to do." Sarah nodded. She felt a small hope in her chest. Maybe this cowboy could give her more than shelter. Maybe he could give her a home. Sarah woke early and stepped outside the barn. The sun was bright, and the air smelled of grass and animals. She watched Jack as he fed the horses and cows. Everything here felt strange, but she wanted to learn. Jack handed her a bucket. "We need to clean the stalls first," he said. Sarah nodded and tried to lift the heavy bucket. It was harder than she thought, but Jack didn't rush her. He watched carefully, ready to help if she struggled. The morning passed slowly. Sarah spilled water on the floor and dropped some hay, but Jack only shook his head once and moved on. He didn't make her feel stupid. That made her feel better. She began to believe she could do the work. After chores, Jack showed her the garden. He asked her to help plant vegetables and pull weeds. Sarah's hands were dirty, but she smiled as she worked. It was hard work, but it felt good to do something useful. Jack talked a little while they worked. He asked where she had come from, but Sarah said only a little. She didn't want to share too much. Still, she noticed he listened carefully. He seemed to care, even if he didn't say much. By evening, Sarah was exhausted. Her clothes were dirty, her hands scraped, but she felt proud. She had worked all day and had not failed. Jack brought her food and a clean blanket. This time, the barn felt warmer, safer. As she lay on the hay that night, Sarah realized she didn't feel quite so alone. Jack had given her more than a place to sleep. He had given her a chance. And for the first time since she had arrived, she felt a small spark of hope that her life could change here. The next morning, Sarah woke to the sound of a horse whinnying. Jack was already outside, grooming the animals. He handed her a brush. "You'll start learning to ride today," he said. Sarah's stomach tightened. She had never been on a horse before. Jack led her to a gentle brown horse. He showed her how to hold the reins and climb onto the saddle. Sarah struggled at first. The horse moved under her clumsily, and she almost fell. Jack held the saddle and encouraged her. "Take it slow. You'll get it." By midday, Sarah could walk the horse slowly around the yard. She felt nervous but also proud. Jack stayed close, guiding her when she wobbled. Sarah noticed how patient he was. He didn't rush her or make her feel foolish. That made her trust him a little more. After riding, Jack asked her to help repair a fence. They worked together, hammering wood and tying ropes. Sarah's muscles ached, but she liked the work. She liked how the ranch felt alive and busy, unlike the loneliness she had felt before. Jack talked more that day. He told her small stories about the ranch, about the animals, and about the town nearby. Sarah listened quietly, realizing he had a gentle side. It surprised her. She had expected a rough, cold man, but he was kind in ways he didn't say out loud. Evening came, and the sky turned pink. Sarah washed her hands in the trough and watched Jack feed the animals one last time. He handed her a warm cloth. "You did well today," he said. Sarah felt a small pride swell inside her chest. She was learning, and she was surviving. That night, in the barn, Sarah lay on the hay. She felt tired but satisfied. The work had been hard, but she realized she could face challenges. She thought about Jack and the kindness he had shown her. Slowly, she began to believe that maybe she could belong here. The morning was gray, and the wind blew cold across the ranch. Sarah stepped outside the barn and saw Jack working with the cows. One of the calves had wandered off, and Jack looked worried. "We need to find it before it gets lost," he said. Sarah ran with him across the fields. The ground was muddy, and she slipped once, but Jack caught her. They searched through tall grass and around the fence lines. Sarah's heart pounded. She had never felt such fear for an animal before. Finally, they found the calf near a small creek. It was stuck in the mud and couldn't move. Sarah froze, unsure what to do. Jack knelt beside it. "Help me pull it out," he said. She took a deep breath and grabbed its legs. Together, they pulled the calf free. The calf shook itself and ran back to the herd. Sarah laughed in relief. She felt proud and strong. Jack patted her shoulder.
"See? You did fine," he said.
Sarah realized she could handle more than she thought. The barn, the chores, the horses, they were teaching her courage. After the calf was safe, Jack gave her warm bread and milk. They ate quietly, sitting on the fence. Sarah watched him feed the other animals. She noticed how gentle he was with them. She thought about how kind he had been to her. As the sun went down, clouds gathered overhead. Jack checked the fences again, and Sarah followed, helping wherever she could. A storm was coming. The wind howled, and Sarah shivered, but she didn't feel alone. Jack stayed close, and she felt safer with him around. That night, in the barn, Sarah listened to the storm outside. Rain pelted the roof, and the wind rattled the doors. She hugged the blanket around her and thought about the day. She had faced fear, helped an animal, and worked alongside Jack. Slowly, she realized that this place, this cowboy, might be her home. The morning after the storm, the ranch smelled fresh and wet. Sarah stepped outside the barn and saw Jack repairing the fence. He waved her over. "We have a lot to do today," he said. Sarah nodded, feeling ready. She wanted to prove she could help. Jack gave her a rope and showed her how to tie it to the post. Sarah struggled at first, but Jack stayed beside her. "Like this," he said, guiding her hands. She watched him carefully and tried again. This time, the knot held. She smiled. Jack nodded quietly, as if proud of her. Next, they fed the horses together. Jack handed her a bucket of oats, and Sarah poured carefully. One of the horses nudged her arm, and she laughed nervously. Jack laughed too, a soft sound that made her heart feel lighter. She realized she was starting to enjoy the work. Later, Jack led her to the orchard. They picked apples from low branches. Sarah's hands were scratched and sticky, but she didn't mind. Jack talked about his childhood on the ranch. Sarah listened closely. She liked hearing his stories. They made him feel real, not just a strong cowboy. By afternoon, Sarah felt tired but happy. She carried buckets of water and helped Jack move hay. He showed her how to lift properly and praised her efforts. Sarah felt useful, needed. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she belonged somewhere. That evening, Jack cooked simple food over the fire. Sarah sat close, warming her hands. He asked her more about herself, and she told him small things. He listened without interrupting, nodding quietly. Sarah felt a strange comfort. He wasn't just a cowboy, he was someone who could understand her. When she went to bed in the barn that night, Sarah hugged the blanket around her. She thought about the day and smiled. She had learned new skills, helped animals, and worked alongside Jack. She realized she was growing stronger, braver, and slowly starting to trust this man who had given her shelter and hope. The next morning, Sarah woke to a quiet ranch. Jack was already outside, tending to the horses. She decided to help him without being asked. She carried a bucket of water, but tripped slightly on the muddy path. Jack saw her and came quickly to steady her. "Careful," he said. "These paths can be tricky." Sarah nodded, embarrassed but grateful. Jack didn't scold her. He only smiled faintly and helped her steady the bucket. She realized he was patient, even when she made mistakes. While feeding the cows, Sarah accidentally dropped some hay. A cow nudged her shoulder, and she stumbled backward. Jack rushed over. "It's okay."
"You're learning," he said.
His calm voice made her feel safe, even though her heart was still racing from fear. Later, they moved to the garden. Sarah tried to pull weeds, but her hands hurt. She sighed, frustrated. Jack noticed and handed her gloves. "Take it slow. You don't have to rush." Sarah took a deep breath and kept working. She appreciated that he noticed her struggles without making her feel weak. In the afternoon, Jack called her over. "Come help me fix the wagon," he said. Sarah followed, curious. While hammering a loose plank, the hammer slipped from her hand and hit the ground loudly. Jack didn't scold her. He laughed softly and showed her how to hold it correctly. She felt relief mixed with amusement. As the sun went down, Sarah felt tired but happy. She had worked hard all day and learned more about the ranch. Jack brought her a warm meal. They ate quietly, side by side, and Sarah felt a closeness growing between them, a trust she had never known before. That night, in the barn, Sarah lay on the hay and thought about the day. She had stumbled, made mistakes, but had survived and learned. She realized she was starting to feel at home here. Jack had given her more than work and shelter. He had given her safety, patience, and kindness, and she was beginning to care for him. The morning air was crisp and smelled of wet grass. Sarah stepped outside the barn and saw Jack preparing the horses for a ride. He handed her a saddle. "Today you'll ride longer," he said. Sarah's stomach tightened, but she nodded. She climbed onto the horse carefully. Jack stayed close, holding the reins until she felt steady. They rode across the fields, over small hills, and through the orchard. Sarah's fear slowly faded, replaced by excitement. She had never felt so free. At one point, the horse stumbled on a loose stone. Sarah almost fell, but Jack was there in an instant, steadying her. Her heart raced, but she laughed nervously. "I'm okay," she said. Jack nodded, his eyes softening. He didn't speak, but his quiet presence comforted her. After the ride, they returned to the barn to feed the animals. Sarah noticed how carefully Jack treated each one. He explained their needs, how to care for them. Sarah listened and asked questions. She liked learning from him and felt proud to help. Later, they carried buckets to the garden. Sarah's arms ached, but she kept working. Jack complimented her effort. "You're getting stronger," he said. She smiled, happy that he noticed her progress. She felt like she was becoming part of the ranch, part of his life. As evening fell, Sarah and Jack sat on the fence, watching the sun set over the fields. They didn't talk much, but Sarah felt a calm connection with him. She realized she trusted him more than she had anyone before. For the first time, she felt safe and at home. That night, in the barn, Sarah lay on the hay, thinking about the day. She had faced fear, learned new skills, and worked hard. She felt proud of herself and grateful for Jack. Slowly, she understood that this cowboy was more than just her protector. He was becoming her friend, maybe even more. The morning was calm, and the sun shone softly over the ranch. Sarah stepped outside and saw Jack preparing a new task for the day. "We need to check the fence near the creek," he said. Sarah nodded and grabbed a bucket of tools, feeling confident. As they walked, Sarah noticed Jack glancing at her occasionally. She felt a small flutter in her chest and quickly looked away. She wasn't sure what it meant, but it made her heart beat faster. When they reached the creek, the fence was broken in several places. Sarah tried to lift a post, but it was heavier than she expected. Jack came over and helped her. "Hold it steady," he said. Together, they set it in place. Sarah realized she enjoyed working side by side with him. While hammering the planks, Sarah accidentally hit her finger. She yelped in pain. Jack quickly grabbed her hand and inspected it. "It's okay," he said, wrapping it gently with a cloth. His touch made her heart race. She realized she had never felt this cared for before. After fixing the fence, they walked back toward the barn. Sarah kept thinking about how Jack had stayed close when she was hurt. She felt a strange warmth in her chest, a mix of gratitude and something more she couldn't name. Later, Jack asked her to help feed the animals. Sarah noticed the softness in his eyes when he looked at her. She smiled shyly and felt a connection growing stronger. She realized that she was starting to care for him more than she expected. That night, in the barn, Sarah lay on the hay and thought about the day. She had worked hard, faced challenges, and shared small moments with Jack. Slowly, she realized that she wasn't just grateful for his protection. She was beginning to like him, maybe even more than she wanted to admit. The morning sun rose over the ranch, casting long shadows across the fields. Sarah stepped outside the barn and saw Jack checking the horses. He waved her over. "We need to sort the feed today," he said. She nodded, feeling ready for the task. As they worked, Sarah accidentally spilled some grain. Jack bent down to help her clean it up. "It's okay," he said softly. She looked up and caught his eyes for a moment, noticing a gentle warmth she hadn't seen before. While carrying buckets of water to the animals, Jack walked beside her. They didn't speak much at first, but there was an easy silence between them. Sarah felt comfortable with him in a way she hadn't felt with anyone else. Later, Jack asked her about her past. Sarah hesitated but decided to share a little. She told him where she had lived and why she had come to the ranch. Jack listened without interrupting, nodding quietly. She realized it felt good to be heard. Afterward, they worked together to mend the barn door. Sarah handed tools to Jack and watched as he fixed the hinges. She noticed how careful he was with every detail, just like he had been with her. She felt a connection growing stronger, built on trust and respect. As evening approached, Jack led the horses back to the stable. Sarah walked beside him, feeling tired but happy. She realized that she looked forward to spending time with him, not just because he gave her shelter, but because she liked being near him. That night, in the barn, Sarah lay on the hay thinking about the day. She had shared a little of herself with Jack and felt accepted. For the first time in a long time, she felt hope, not just for a home, but for a life where she could belong and maybe even love. The morning air was cool, and the sky was gray. Sarah stepped outside the barn and saw Jack near the horses. He looked tense. "A storm is coming," he said. "We need to secure everything before it hits." Sarah nodded and grabbed a rope, ready to help. They worked quickly, tying down hay bales and checking the fences. The wind started to pick up, making it harder to hold the ropes. Sarah struggled, but Jack stayed close, steadying her when she lost her balance. A sudden clap of thunder made Sarah jump. She dropped the rope, and one of the hay bales shifted dangerously. Jack grabbed it just in time. "Be careful," he said, his voice sharp but concerned. Sarah nodded, her heart racing. They moved to the barn doors next. Jack handed her a heavy latch. "Hold this while I secure the other side," he said. Sarah held it tightly, her arms shaking, but she didn't let go. Jack noticed her effort and gave her a small nod of approval. The storm started to rain heavily, and the wind howled around them. Sarah and Jack worked together to secure the last fence near the creek. They laughed nervously when a strong gust almost knocked them over. The shared danger made them feel closer. After the barn and fences were secure, they took a moment to catch their breath. Sarah looked at Jack and realized how much she trusted him. He smiled faintly, and for the first time, she felt a warmth in her chest she couldn't ignore. That night, in the barn, Sarah lay on the hay listening to the rain pounding on the roof. She thought about the day and the way Jack had protected her. She realized that he was more than just a cowboy who gave her shelter. He was someone she could depend on, someone she was starting to care for deeply. The morning was calm after the storm. Sarah stepped outside the barn and saw Jack feeding the horses. He waved her over. "Want to help me check the garden?" he asked. She nodded, eager to spend time with him. They walked to the garden together. Sarah noticed the way Jack moved, careful, calm, and steady. He handed her a basket. "We'll pick vegetables for dinner," he said. As she worked, she felt a quiet comfort being near him. Jack paused and looked at her. "You've learned a lot since you arrived," he said. Sarah blushed. "I've tried," she whispered. He smiled faintly, and she felt a warmth spread in her chest. She hadn't realized how much his approval meant to her. While picking vegetables, Sarah told Jack a little more about her past. She explained how hard life had been before the ranch. Jack listened quietly, nodding and occasionally asking a gentle question. Sarah felt heard in a way she hadn't felt in a long time. After the garden, they carried the baskets back together. Sarah laughed when a carrot slipped from the basket and rolled across the yard. Jack laughed too, a soft, warm sound. For a moment, all the worries of her past felt far away. That evening, Jack cooked dinner over the fire. Sarah helped set the table in the small kitchen. They ate quietly, but the closeness between them was comfortable. She realized she liked these simple moments with him more than she expected. That night, in the barn, Sarah lay on the hay thinking about the day. She had shared more of herself and felt accepted. She also realized that her feelings for Jack were growing. He wasn't just someone who gave her a home. He was becoming someone she cared about deeply. The morning was quiet, but the air felt tense. Sarah stepped outside the barn and saw Jack checking the horses. One of the horses, a young colt, had gotten loose during the night. "We need to catch it before it wanders too far," Jack said. Sarah ran alongside him as he led the search. The colt galloped nervously through the fields, and Sarah's heart pounded. She had never moved so fast before, but she didn't want to let Jack down. Jack called to the colt softly, trying to calm it. "Go slowly, Sarah. Don't scare it." She approached carefully and held out her hands. The colt stopped for a moment, then bolted again. Sarah stumbled but didn't fall, and Jack quickly steadied her. Finally, they cornered the colt near the creek. Jack held the reins while Sarah helped calm it. Together, they guided it back to the stable. Sarah felt relief wash over her. She had never felt so proud of herself for handling something so wild. Afterward, Jack handed her a cloth to clean her hands. "You were brave today," he said quietly. Sarah looked up at him and saw the faintest smile on his face. Her chest warmed. She realized he truly trusted her now. Later, they tended to the other animals together. Sarah noticed Jack watching her closely, and she felt a small flutter in her chest. She realized that her feelings for him were growing stronger with each passing day. That night, in the barn, Sarah lay on the hay thinking about the day. She had faced fear, worked alongside Jack, and felt his trust. Slowly, she understood that she was not just grateful for his protection. She cared for him deeply, and the thought made her heart beat faster. The morning sun was soft and warm. Sarah stepped outside the barn and saw Jack brushing the horses. He waved her over. "Want to help me today?" he asked. She nodded, feeling happy to be near him. Jack handed her a brush and showed her how to care for the horses. Sarah's hands moved carefully over their coats. Jack stood close, guiding her when needed, and she felt a comfort in his quiet presence. Later, Jack asked her to carry water to the garden. Sarah walked beside him, feeling the warmth of the sun and the ease of being with him. He glanced at her and smiled. That small smile made her heart flutter. While picking vegetables, Sarah accidentally dropped a carrot. Jack bent down and picked it up for her. "Careful," he said softly. She smiled shyly, noticing how gentle he was. She realized she liked being around him more than she had expected. After the chores, Jack brought out a small stool and asked Sarah to sit. He handed her a clean cloth and gently wiped the dirt from her hands and face. Sarah felt her cheeks grow warm. She hadn't felt cared for like this in a long time. As evening came, they sat on the fence, watching the sun set over the fields. They didn't speak much, but Sarah felt a closeness growing between them. Her heart felt light, and she realized she wanted to be near him always. That night, in the barn, Sarah lay on the hay thinking about the day. She had learned more, worked hard, and shared small moments with Jack. Slowly, she understood that her feelings for him were real. She liked him, not just for protection, but for who he was. The morning air was warm, and the sun shone over the ranch. Sarah stepped outside the barn and saw Jack preparing breakfast over the fire. He smiled at her. "Morning." Want some help with the chores today? He asked. She nodded, feeling happy to be near him. They worked together feeding the animals. Sarah noticed how carefully Jack handled each one. When a horse nudged her shoulder, he laughed softly and said, "You're doing fine." His words made her smile, and her heart felt lighter than it had in a long time. Later, Jack asked her to help mend a fence. While they worked side by side, he reached over to adjust her grip on the rope. Their hands touched briefly, and Sarah felt a spark she couldn't ignore. She looked up, and he gave her a small, quiet smile. After the fence, Jack brought her a bucket of water. "You've done a lot today," he said. "Come sit for a moment." Sarah sat beside him on the fence. They watched the animals together in silence. She felt safe, cared for, and close to him in a way she hadn't expected. Jack turned to her. "I'm glad you're here," he said quietly. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. She looked at him, surprised by the warmth in his eyes. For the first time, she felt that he might feel the same way she did. They spent the afternoon together, finishing chores and walking around the ranch. Each moment was easy, natural, and filled with small gestures that made Sarah's heart race. She realized she didn't just want shelter, she wanted to be close to him. That night, in the barn, Sarah lay on the hay thinking about the day. She felt her feelings for Jack growing stronger. She realized she cared for him deeply, not just as someone who gave her a home, but as someone she could love. She drifted off to sleep with a small, happy smile. The morning sun lit the ranch with a soft glow. Sarah stepped outside the barn and saw Jack waiting by the fence. He smiled at her. "Morning, Sarah. Ready for breakfast?" he asked. She nodded, feeling her heart race. After breakfast, Jack asked her to help with the horses. As they worked side by side, he stopped and looked at her. "Sarah," he said softly, "I'm glad you're here. You've made this place better just by being in it." Sarah felt her chest tighten. She looked at him, unsure what to say. Jack reached out and gently took her hand. "I know you've been through a lot," he continued, "but I want you to stay here, with me. Not just in the barn, but in my home, in my life." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She felt a warmth she had never felt before. I want that too," she whispered. Jack smiled and squeezed her hand. She realized that she had finally found the home she had been searching for. Not just a place to stay, but a place where she belonged. They spent the day together, feeding the animals and working around the ranch, but everything felt different. There was a new closeness between them, a bond built on trust, care, and growing love. Sarah felt happy and safe for the first time in her life. As the sun began to set, Jack led her to the house. "This is your home now," he said, opening the door. Sarah stepped inside, looking around at the warm, cozy rooms. She realized she had finally found a place where she belonged. That night, Sarah lay in a proper bed for the first time in weeks, feeling safe, loved, and at home. She thought about everything that had happened. The barn, the work, the fear, and the moments with Jack. She smiled softly, knowing that she had finally found a true home and someone who cared for her deeply. On Wednesday, November 12th, 2025, 11:23 a.m. Virtual Assistant 320@gmail.com wrote. https://drive google.com/files/d/1uk0efils/shTJYUL5SBN-PRGYPJTX/view question mark USP =sharing. On Wednesday, November 12th, 2025 at 10:43 a.m. Victoria Adelic, thevictoriaadelic@gmail.com wrote. She was sold until an Apache reached out to her and set her free. The sun was hot and harsh over the small village. The ground was dry, and the crops had died months ago. She was 18, quiet and hardworking. Her family, like everyone else in the village, struggled to survive. Every morning, she walked to the river to fetch water. It was a long walk, and sometimes she wondered if the river would dry up too. Life had become about waiting, waiting for rain, waiting for food, waiting for something to change. Her father used to be a carpenter. He made chairs, tables, and toys for children. People respected him. But now no one needed his work. No one had money for furniture when they could barely eat. His tools gathered dust in the corner of their small hut. He tried to stay strong for his family, but every day his eyes looked more tired. Hunger had taken away his smile. The drought had lasted almost 2 years. At first, people shared what they had, hoping the weather would soon turn. But as months passed, even good people started to change. Families fought over little things. Neighbors stopped helping each other. Some left the village to look for better land, but most never came back. It was as if the world had forgotten them. One afternoon, as she returned from the river, she saw a carriage at the edge of the village. It was strange, shiny, clean, and clearly from the city. A man stepped out, dressed well and smelling of perfume. He spoke softly, but his eyes were cold. He asked to see her father. People whispered that he was a merchant, buying supplies for the city. But soon, everyone learned the truth. He was buying people. That night, she heard her parents arguing in low voices. Her father said they had no food left. Her mother cried, saying there must be another way. The girl sat quietly in the corner, pretending not to hear. But she knew what was happening. She had seen the same story unfold in other homes. Daughters were being traded for coins, not for greed, but for survival. The next morning, the merchant returned. Her father stood outside, holding his wooden carving knife. His hands trembled as he spoke with the man. The merchant smiled and handed him a small bag of silver. The father looked at the ground, unable to meet his daughter's eyes. She stood still, her heart beating fast. She did not cry, did not speak. She only watched as her life changed in silence. That day, she learned that hunger can make good people do terrible things. It was the day she stopped believing that love alone could save a family. It was the day her father's hands, once proud and strong, took silver instead of hope. And though no one said the words aloud, everyone in the village knew. The girl had been sold. The carriage moved fast along the dry road, raising clouds of dust behind it. Inside, the girl sat quietly, holding the small bundle of clothes her mother had packed.
She didn't speak.
She didn't cry. The merchant sat across from her, counting coins and humming a tune. Everything around her felt strange. The moving wheels, the smell of the leather seats, and the silence of her own fear. When she tried to look out the window, all she saw was emptiness. No trees, no people, no sign of home. It was the longest ride of her life. By evening, they reached the man's estate. It stood tall behind thick walls made of stone, surrounded by soldiers and servants. The house looked beautiful from the outside, but felt cold inside. When she stepped down from the carriage, 2 women came and took her things without a word. The merchant gave orders and left. From that moment, her old life was gone. She had no name here, only a duty to serve. The servants' quarters were small and dark. The older women showed her where to sleep, where to wash, and how to behave. "Don't speak unless spoken to," one of them said. "Don't look the master in the eye. And never ask questions." The rules were simple but heavy. Every mistake meant punishment. She nodded, too afraid to reply. That night, she lay on a thin mat, staring at the ceiling. Everything was silent except for the sound of the wind against the window. Days turned into weeks. Her work began early each morning. She cleaned the floors, washed clothes, and carried water from the well. The mansion was large, with long hallways and heavy doors. Servants moved quickly, always looking down. She learned their names slowly: Anna, Ruth, and Lydia. Some were kind, others were broken. They warned her not to draw attention to herself. "He notices everything," Anna whispered one night. "And he doesn't forgive." The master of the house was a man in his 40s, tall, with sharp eyes and a calm voice that demanded obedience. To his guests, he was generous, always smiling. But when the doors closed, that smile disappeared. He controlled everyone: the servants, the guards, even the air in the room. She saw him punish a worker for spilling wine. Another was whipped for speaking too loudly. Every act of cruelty made her more careful, quieter, smaller. One afternoon, she made a mistake. She spilled water while serving at the dining table. The master's hand slammed the cup to the ground. "Clumsy," he said, his voice calm but cold. She knelt to clean it up, shaking. No one helped her. That night, she cried for the first time since leaving her village, covering her mouth so no one would hear. From that day, she learned how to move like a shadow, silent, unnoticed, and invisible. Each morning, she woke before sunrise, working until her hands hurt. At night, she stared out the window, wondering if her father regretted what he had done. She didn't hate him. She didn't hate anyone. But she carried a quiet wish inside her, that one day, someone would see her not as property, but as a person. Far from the mansion, across the dry plains, a group of riders moved through the dust. Among them was the Apache warrior. He was quiet, calm, and strong. His face carried the marks of years spent in battle. He had seen loss, hunger, and betrayal, but still held on to one thing: honor. He was not rich, but he lived with purpose. When the call came from the rich man who needed soldiers to protect his land, the warrior agreed to go. Not because he cared about money, but because he wanted to understand why men like that held so much power over others. The journey to the estate took many days. The warrior and his men camped under the stars, cooked simple meals, and shared stories of old battles. Most of them fought for survival, not loyalty. But the warrior was different. He didn't fight for gold or fame. He fought to keep peace where he could. His men respected him for that. He didn't speak much, but when he did, they listened. When he finally reached the estate, he noticed how large and guarded it was. Soldiers patrolled every corner. Servants moved quickly with their eyes down. The walls were high, meant to keep others out, or perhaps to keep fear in. The warrior dismounted and waited by the gate. After a while, the rich man came out, dressed in fine clothes and surrounded by guards. He smiled when he saw the warrior. "You must be the Apache they spoke of," he said. The warrior nodded. "Good," the man continued. "You'll lead my soldiers, protect my land, and I'll make you rich." The warrior looked around before replying. "I don't fight for gold," he said plainly. The rich man raised an eyebrow. "Then why are you here?" The warrior's voice was steady. "Because where there is greed, there is pain. I want to see both for myself." The rich man laughed, thinking it was a joke, but the warrior didn't smile. He was not a man who played with words. Over the next few days, the warrior learned how the estate operated. The soldiers were paid well, but treated like tools. The servants were silent, always afraid. The rich man spent his time planning wars against neighbors, fighting not for defense but for control. The warrior led the men into battle when ordered, but every victory felt empty. The land they fought for was not his, and the people they fought against were just as poor as those they served. One evening, as he walked through the courtyard, he saw her for the first time. She was carrying a tray, moving carefully to avoid spilling water. Their eyes met for a brief second. She looked away quickly, but that one glance told him everything: fear, exhaustion, and something else, something deeper. She looked like someone who had forgotten what freedom felt like. The warrior watched as she disappeared into the hallway. That moment stayed in his mind longer than he expected. That night, while the other soldiers laughed and drank, the warrior sat alone by the fire. The image of the girl haunted him. He had seen many slaves before, many servants, but something about her was different. She reminded him of the innocent lives destroyed by war, the ones who never asked for conflict but always paid the price. For the first time in many years, the warrior felt a stirring in his heart. He didn't know her name, but he knew her pain. And deep down, he made a quiet promise that if ever the chance came, he would find a way to help her. The warrior's days followed a strict pattern, training soldiers at dawn, guarding the estate at noon, and patrolling the fields at night. But as the days passed, he began to see things that disturbed him. The servants worked without rest, beaten for mistakes that weren't their fault. The soldiers, though loyal, were tired of fighting battles that didn't belong to them. The rich man ruled with fear, not respect. The warrior didn't speak out, but each injustice left a mark on his mind. He started to notice the girl more often. She moved quietly through the courtyard, always careful not to draw attention. She never looked up, never smiled, and spoke to no one. Yet her silence said more than words. One afternoon, he saw her struggling to carry a heavy pot of water. Before he could help, a guard shouted at her to move faster. She stumbled, spilling some of it on the ground. The guard raised his hand to strike her, but the warrior stepped forward. "Enough," he said in a calm, steady voice. The guard froze, uncertain whether to obey or challenge him. "She made a mistake," the warrior said. "Not a crime." The guard lowered his hand and walked away. The girl looked at the warrior briefly, whispering a soft "thank you" before hurrying off. That small moment stayed with him. It was the first time he had interfered with the master's rules. Later that day, the rich man heard of it. He called the warrior to his office, his tone polite but cold. "My guards say you stopped a punishment," he said. The warrior didn't deny it. "She was frightened," he replied simply. "Fear doesn't build loyalty." The rich man smiled slightly. "You sound like a teacher," he said. "But in my house, fear works better than kindness." The warrior said nothing. He just bowed and left. That night, the girl was by the well again, washing dishes. The warrior passed by on his patrol. She looked up, startled. "You shouldn't speak to me," she said softly. "It will cause trouble." He stopped a few steps away. "Then I won't speak long," he said. "Are you all right?" She hesitated, unsure whether to answer. "I'm used to it," she said finally. "Used to what?" he asked. "Being owned," she whispered, her voice trembling. The warrior looked at her for a long moment, then said quietly, "No one owns a soul. Not forever." Then he turned and walked away. For days after, those words echoed in her mind. Not forever. It was the first time anyone had spoken to her like she mattered. She didn't know what to make of it. Hope was dangerous in that place. But something inside her shifted, a tiny spark she thought was long dead. She began to move differently, just a little more upright, just a little less afraid. The warrior, too, began to change. He found it harder to look away when the servants were mistreated. He started questioning why he still served the rich man. His men noticed his silence growing heavier. "You're not yourself," one of them said. The warrior only replied, "Maybe I'm starting to remember who I was." Meanwhile, the rich man prepared for another campaign. He spoke of enemies on his borders and gold to be won. The warrior knew what it meant. Another war fought for pride, not peace. Yet when orders came for him to lead the troops, he accepted without protest. As he rode out that morning, he looked back once at the mansion. The girl stood near the doorway, watching him leave. Their eyes met again, just for a moment. Neither spoke, but both felt the same question inside. What would it take to be free? The war began sooner than expected. The rich man's enemies had gathered their own soldiers, ready to defend their land. The warrior led the troops through rough terrain, facing hunger, thirst, and sleepless nights. Every battle felt the same. Men shouting, swords clashing, and blood spilled for reasons no one truly understood. The warrior fought skillfully, but his heart was not in it. Each time he looked at the bodies left behind, he asked himself why men like the rich man never fought their own wars. Back at the mansion, the girl continued her daily work. The master was restless and angry, shouting at the servants more than usual. Without the warrior's calm presence, the guards had grown crueler. One night, she overheard two servants whispering that the war was going badly. Another said that many soldiers had already died. She prayed quietly for the warrior's safety, though she barely knew him. For reasons she couldn't explain, his voice still gave her comfort. Weeks passed before the army returned. The warrior rode into the courtyard covered in dust and blood, his face tired but calm. Many soldiers were gone. The rich man came out to welcome him, smiling as if he had won a great victory. "You have done well," he said, raising a cup of wine. "My land is safe again." The warrior looked at the men who had survived, fewer than half of those who had left. "Your land is safe," he said quietly, "but your people are dying." The rich man only laughed. "Death is the price of power." That evening, a feast was held in the mansion. Music played, food filled the tables, and wine flowed like water. The servants moved quickly to serve, their faces expressionless. The warrior sat in silence, watching. He saw the girl standing in a corner, holding a tray, her wrists wrapped in cloth to hide fresh bruises. She met his eyes for a brief moment, then looked away. Something inside him hardened. When the feast ended, the rich man called him forward. "You've earned your reward," he said. "Gold, land, whatever you wish, name it." The room fell quiet. Everyone waited for the warrior's answer. He looked at the master, then at the girl. His voice was steady when he spoke. "I want her." The master's smile faded slightly. "The servant?" he asked. The warrior nodded. "She's not for sale." The rich man said at first, testing him. "Everything has a price," the warrior replied. The master leaned back, amused. "Then her price," he said slowly, "is everything you have." The room went silent again. The warrior reached for his pouch. It contained all his earnings, coins, medals, and small treasures collected through years of service. Without hesitation, he poured everything onto the table. Gold and silver rolled across the surface, shining in the candlelight. "Everything," he repeated. The rich man studied him for a long moment, then gave a small nod. "Very well. She's yours." The warrior turned to the girl, who stood frozen, not believing what she had heard. He took the paper that held her deed of ownership and placed it in her hands. "This belongs to you now," he said. "No one owns you anymore." She looked at him with tears in her eyes. "I don't understand," she whispered. "Why would you do this?" He looked at her gently. "Because freedom should never be something bought with fear." Then he walked away, leaving the hall in silence. That night, the girl sat by the fire holding the paper. For the first time, she felt the weight of her own life, her choices, her future, her freedom. She whispered to herself, "He didn't buy me. He set me free." And with that, she burned the paper, watching the flames rise until nothing remained but ash and a promise to never be a slave again. The next morning, the mansion was tense. Word spread fast. The warrior had given up all his wealth to free a servant. The guards whispered among themselves, the servants hid their smiles, and the rich man's face grew dark with anger. He felt humiliated. To him, the act was not kindness, it was defiance. He summoned the warrior to his chambers, his voice sharp with control. "You think you can make a fool of me?" he asked. The warrior stood calmly, unarmed, his expression unreadable. "I did what was right," he said. "Right?" the master repeated, laughing bitterly. "You think you know what's right better than the man who gave you everything?" The rich man's anger grew with every word. "You will regret this," he hissed. "You'll find that freedom is not as cheap as you think." But the warrior didn't respond. He turned and walked out, his silence more powerful than any argument. That silence made the rich man's hatred deepen. He sent men to follow the girl, to remind her that freedom in his land was only an illusion. The girl, unaware of the danger, had already left the mansion. She went to a nearby village, hoping to start a simple life, to work, to live without fear. For the first time, she breathed easily. She rented a small hut and began weaving baskets for trade. Her hands, once used to serve others, now built her own future. But at night, she often thought of the warrior, his calm eyes, his quiet strength, the way he had looked at her without pity. Meanwhile, the warrior packed his few belongings and prepared to leave the mansion as well. He had nothing left to tie him there, no gold, no title, no peace. His men, loyal to him more than the master, offered to follow him. "Where will you go?" one asked. "Anywhere but here," he replied. They left quietly at dawn, disappearing into the hills before anyone could stop them. Days later, the rich man sent soldiers after the girl. They reached her hut at night, breaking down the door. She screamed and tried to run, but they caught her and dragged her outside. "You belong to the master," one of them said. She struggled, shouting, "No, I'm free." They hit her, forcing her to the ground. Just then, a deep voice broke through the chaos. "Let her go." It was the warrior. He had returned. The soldiers turned, startled. He stood in the shadows, armed only with a blade. You have no right to take her, he said firmly. The leader sneered. You sold yourself cheap for her freedom. Now she'll pay the price. Before he could speak again, the warrior moved, quick, silent, deadly. In moments, 2 soldiers were on the ground. The others fled into the dark. The girl ran to him, trembling. You came back, she said. I never left, he answered quietly. He helped her to her feet, his hands gentle. You're safe now. But they both knew it wasn't true. The rich man would never stop until he made them suffer for their defiance. That night, they sat by the fire in silence. The girl looked at him and asked, What will we do now? He stared into the flames and said, We run. Not because we're afraid, but because freedom has a price, and we're both willing to pay it. The fire crackled softly, and for the first time in her life, she felt the warmth of safety beside someone who truly cared. The next morning, the air was cold and quiet. The warrior and the girl packed what little they had, food, water, and a few tools. They left before sunrise, moving through the thick forest path that led toward the mountains. The warrior knew the land well. Every trail, every hidden stream, every abandoned hut, he had studied them during years of patrol. We'll stay off the main road, he said. The master's men will search there first. The girl nodded, trusting him completely. After days of traveling through forests and hills, the warrior and the girl finally reached a small village far from the master's land. It was quiet, simple, and safe. The people there welcomed them cautiously, unsure of their story but offering food and shelter. The girl felt a strange relief. For the first time, she didn't have to hide. She could eat without fear, sleep without guards, and breathe without chains. The warrior helped her settle in. They found a small hut with a garden, and he showed her how to plant seeds that could grow into food. This is yours, he said. Take care of it. It will grow as you do. She smiled faintly, feeling the weight of freedom in her hands. Each seed was a promise, a life rebuilt on her own terms. Days turned into weeks. The girl learned to trade her baskets, tend the garden, and speak freely with the villagers. Her body, once tired from endless labor, grew stronger. But most importantly, her spirit healed. She remembered the warrior's words over and over. No one owns a soul. She repeated them silently every morning, letting them guide her. The warrior stayed with her for a short while, teaching her how to protect herself and remain cautious. Then, as quietly as he had arrived, he left. I have my path, he said. You have yours. But remember, you are never truly alone. Your freedom is worth everything. She watched him disappear into the hills, feeling both loss and gratitude. His gift had been more than safety. It had been the chance to live her life. In the months that followed, the girl began helping others. She taught villagers how to defend themselves, how to rebuild after losses, and how to protect their freedom. The story of her escape spread quietly, inspiring those who had suffered under cruelty. Her life became an example that courage and mercy could change more than one life at a time. Years passed. The girl, now a woman, became a leader in her community. She planted crops, built homes, and guided her people with patience and strength. The lessons of fear and obedience faded, replaced by hope and action. She often thought of the warrior, never expecting to see him again, but feeling his presence in every choice she made. Freedom, she realized, was not a single moment. It was every decision she made from that day forward, to act with courage, to help others, and to live without fear. The warrior had given her life, but she had made it her own. And in that life, she found purpose, peace, and the quiet joy of being truly free.